his hand to appreciate them?
No, sir. I raised my hand last night.
I see.
And you said that you would like the answer. Actually, my question is the natural sequel to the question asked last night, the last question, which was about Ahl Quran. And sir, I respectfully ask, what are the main features, salient beliefs of Ahl Hadith? And as I gather, they are the same people as called Wahhabis. And secondly, what are the main differences between Wahhabis and Barelvis?
Don't call them Wahhabis because this is what they don't like. Wahhab was the founder of this sect in Saudi Arabia. In fact, the present regime was installed with the help of Maulana Abdul Wahab and his followers. They had a political alliance together. So they propagated the ground to them and gained more religious followers in favor of the grandfather of the present king. So, ever since, they are known to be Wahhabis. But Ahl Hadith is a term loosely applied, in fact, to all those who are their muqallidin. They believe in the tradition as well as the Devbandis do. And in fact, in all reality, they prefer the tradition even to the Holy Quran. Although in so many words it would be unacceptable to them. But in essence, this is their doctrine. They give it a very rational term, in fact, apparently making it acceptable. They say that because the Holy Quran was revealed to Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, so whatever he said was by way of interpretation of the Holy Quran. And as such, hadith should be the decisive factor in all issues where there is a disagreement on the interpretation of the Holy Quran. And hadith should be taken as an arbiter. While the others say that is correct, that Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam knew what was revealed to him much better than anyone else on the earth. Yet we are not sure whether things which are attributed to him were really said by him. So those who do not believe with their view, or the rest, their faith is this, their attitude is this, and that is particularly the Ahmadi attitude. That hadith would be of course acceptable as an interpretation, but only when there is no obvious contradiction between the subject of hadith and a verse of the Holy Quran. So if there is an obvious contradiction, because we know that the Holy Quran is unchangeable and has never been corrupted and will never be corrupted, most authentic word that ever was revealed to man, and would continue to remain so. This is every Muslim's attitude with respect to the Holy Quran, towards the Holy Quran. So as such, we know that it is most dependable. We also know that the word of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is most dependable, subservient to the Holy Quran. But we don't know whether every word which has been attributed to him has really been uttered by him. That is the main problem. So if there is an obvious contradiction, then we will reject that hadith which is supposed to be a saying, but we don't believe them. So we don't reject a hadith as against the Holy Quran. We reject a saying attributed to Huzur Akram Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. This is our position. So again, there is no question of hadith being an arbiter, because the Holy Quran, if you know the verses of the Holy Quran which gave birth to certain traditions, a group of traditions, In fact, every tradition is rooted in some of the verses of the Holy Quran. So if you know that every tradition is based on the Holy Quran, then there is no question of any contradiction. No question of you are requiring to dictate terms, either the Holy Quran to the Hadith or Hadith to the Holy Quran. They are in complete unison with each other. They are in full accord with each other. Only one is an explanation in some detail of the other. So this is the Ahmadi attitude. And Ahl Hadith again are divided into two sections. Their attitude as far as the relationship between Hadith and Quran is concerned, it is the same. But some are called Muqallideen and some are called non-Muqallideen. The Deobandis are Muqallideen. Muqallideen means those who follow some saintly people, some great scholars, and their attitude to their saying is exactly what their attitude is to the tradition vis-a-vis the Holy Quran. So they say that these great scholars knew better what Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was saying. So their interpretation of the tradition is to be accepted and followed. So they followed the great scholars like Maulana Mufti Mahmud is one of their leaders. He is being followed as such. His interpretation would be accepted by some, those who follow him. And so that could be his relationship to Maulana Muhammad Nanutri and other great scholars of Deoband and many other earlier scholars, of course. So, but the Ahmadis, they are free. They say we are not going to follow anyone, not even Abdul Wahab. Although in reality, the majority of the Ahl Hadith living in Saudi Arabia, they follow Maulana Abdul Wahab meticulously, and they see to it that everything he said is done and accepted in total. But the Ahl Hadith outside, living in Pakistan for instance, they don't follow them. They are just called Wahhabis for the sake of persecution, and that's all. In fact, before Ahmadiyya came into being, the relationship between the rest of the Muslims and us today was exactly the relationship of rest of the Muslims and the Wahhabis of that time. But much worse in many respects. And the Wahhabis were not promised anything from Allah. That was the main difference. So when atrocities were committed against them, there was no one to counter them, to come to their help and save them from persecution and everything. So that is the major difference. But otherwise, they were the most hated community in the subcontinent. This is why to call somebody a Wahhabi who was not a Wahhabi was a much greater invective, much severer invective than to call anybody a Qadiani today. So this is their relationship between themselves. So Ahl Hadith are the antipodes of Ahl Quran. As they, in their extreme attitude, have become individualized, or so they claim. So Ahl Hadith have become individuals as far as Hadith goes. It is a sect, yet the fundamental belief of the sect is that each individual has a right to interpret Hadith as he deems fit. So, as far as the Holy Quran goes, now it goes through two channels. One of the individual who interprets Hadith, and one of the Hadith, which is whether right or wrong, interprets the Holy Quran. So you can see what havoc could be played to the views of such a people. Brahmanis are extremists in another direction. The Brahmanis believe believe in the Holy Quran and the tradition and everything, yet they believe in their saints much more than anything else. And many Brahmins don't even read the Holy Quran. They don't have to. Because, the ordinary people, whatever their saint and their mullah, the peer, says, it is quite enough for them. And they have, in fact, short-circuited in the sense that because the peer has direct relationship with Allah, he can't go wrong. So he has every right to do things and say things, and every right to be obeyed. Apparently, even if apparently he has contradicted the clear injunctions of the Holy Quran. So the true voice of the Brahmin religion is depicted in a couplet, though not of a Brahmin origin, but it can be applicable to the Brahmin as well. Bamay sajjade rami kun garat pire muwan goyar ke salik bekhabar nabwat zera ho rasme manzila. If the pire muwan, the one who serves the wine, and the old one for that matter, there were great old experienced people who were called Sati, and the next step higher to a Sati was Pir Muhan, the great old man of this world of alcoholics. So if he says, the Pir Muhan, that your prayer cloth should be dipped in wine, accept that advice, because the leader knows the pitfalls and the rights and wrongs of the path better than anyone else. So he is the leader who knows the path, and he knows where to step and where to avoid. So this is why whatever he says you must accept, shutting your eyes to the subject matter. It's a beautiful couplet, although I have rather mutilated it in translation, but in origin it's a beautiful couplet. But this is in essence the meaning of this couplet. So these Brahmins go to the extent of even ignoring clear injunctions of the Holy Quran, because they say that Pir Muhan has said that. This is why gradually they have shifted to idolatry, and very clear idolatry for that matter. There is absolutely no doubt about it. You will find them prostrating before the graves. If you go to darbars of Data Ganbash, you will see people prostrating before the grave and crying and begging of the dead Data to give them this and that. And similarly, all people who have died centuries ago, they are attributed things which are absolutely unacceptable to the clear Islamic teaching. So much so that they are hostile to the teaching of the Holy Quran. For instance, Hazrat Sayyid Abdul Qadir Jilani is known to have performed things which, according to no tradition, Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam ever came near performing, never claimed of these things. It is said that once a boat capsized in the river, and an old lady's son, who was just recently married or perhaps was in the process of going to bring his bride with all the barat and things, everybody, including that son of the lady, got drowned. Now that lady was crying so piteously that Hazrat Pir Sahib, Sayyid Abdul Qadir Jilani, when he heard her, he was deeply moved, and he asked her what was the matter, what had hurt her so deeply, and she was wailing, in such a manner that it is intolerable for people to listen. The lady told him the story, and she said that the boy drowned and he was my only son. So he said, okay, it doesn't matter. I'll go and fetch her spirit back. So he immediately flew in the direction of heaven, and while Hazrat Israel was taking all the souls of the dead ones of that day, all his bed was enwrapped in one like a postman's, what do you call that? No, it's not that bag, I think, bag is the word. So something like that, it is said in the story, was in his hand, and he was traveling fast towards heaven to present the souls to the Creator. So he caught him halfway and said, return that soul immediately. So he said, no, it was the order of my Lord, I have done it. How can I accept your order against the order of Allah? So he said, well, will you do it for volition, or shall I have to beat you up? So he was in such a nasty mood that Israel got afraid, and he gave up that soul ultimately. He put his hand in the pouch and brought the soul up. So he returned with the soul. He was very upset, Israel, according to the story. And this story is accepted all over the subcontinent by the Brahmins. We are laughing at it, but they were very serious. So when he went to Allah, he reported that, look, this such and such person, you love him so much, and this is his conduct. I told him in clear terms that it was Allah's orders, and he's doing it against Allah's orders, whatever he wanted me to do. And he forced me, and he insulted me, and he said he was going to beat me up. So I had no recourse but to ultimately give up. So Allah said, keep quiet. If you had not done, and he had taken the whole bag away from you and released all these souls, what could we do? No alternative. So, good riddance, This is the story about Hazrat Pir Abdul Qadir Jilani, one of the myriad saints. They have grown out of their fiction. So this is Bereluism. And they consider these as a hadith, they always call them Wahhabis, to be the worst people on earth. And they believe that they are not Muslims, much more, and this is in writing, much more non-Muslims than Ahmadis could ever be. And their fatwa against them is so severe that one of their not very well known, but I think the one leader, Maulana, what was the name? Ahmad Raza Khan. Maulana Sayyid Ahmad Raza Khan Sahib Barelvi. I have read his writing on this. He says these Wahhabis are such pakka kafir that it is out of question for you to say your prayer behind them. Even they must not be permitted to say their prayer behind you. To visit their mosque is out of question, of course, but to permit them to enter your mosque is a great sin. Not to mention other relationships. You can't even say Assalamu alaikum to them. If they say Assalamu alaikum, turn your face and don't answer it. To attend their marriage ceremonies is out of question. To go to them in sympathy and commiseration if somebody has died is a great sin. Even to touch them is a sin, and you must wash yourself clean, very thoroughly. If by accident some Wahhabi, grazes past you. So all this and said, now Maulana turns to their marriage ceremony and the rules and regulations regarding their marriages. So he says, to permit them to marry among you is of course out of question, inconceivable. But to permit them to be married among other sects, even that is inconceivable. Not among Muslims, of course. But he says then, it's not enough. I have not yet told you everything about it. They are not permitted to marry among other religions either. For instance, among Hindus or Sikhs, if they marry any woman born out of a woman, that marriage would be illegal according to Islam. Now, leaving human beings aside, even if they choose to marry ultimately, because the human beings are now out of bounds for them, even if they marry some animal and a child somehow is born, that child will be an illegitimate child. And the words he uses are very full-throated words to that. So that child will not inherit the father because he is an illegitimate child. Now he says that if somebody wonders why all this and somebody begins to suspect the validity of this verdict, all this verdict would be applicable to him. And if someone suspects the validity of this applying to him who suspects, then everything would apply to him as well. This is their attitude towards the so-called Wahhabis and the Hadithis in fact. And now they have joined hands against Ahmadis and say we are all one Muslims, belonging to one large Muslim society, and the Ahmadis are outside the faith of Islam. Imagine their attitude to religion and their integrity and all they stand for. In fact, during the 74, I told one of the DPP leaders who was responsible for running this affair, this show I should have said, I told him, look here, if I'm telling you this, you can ask Maulana Noorani about this. And what would be your position? If he would turn back to you and say, do you suspect? If you suspect, all this is applicable to you. So, after all this, how can you say that all the Muslims have joined hand and it is their considered opinion and a verdict, a unanimous verdict against Ahmadis, while there is no unanimous verdict against anybody else? This was his plea. I said the fact is that unanimous verdict can be established if I took some evidence with me. If you take up the fatwa, the verdicts, official verdicts of these religious scholars, one after the other, taking for instance the case of the Shiites, all the rest of the sects have at one time or another declared them as pakatakas. So although they didn't sit together jointly to declare that, the verdict is unanimous. At different times, different scholars have given the verdict, and this is the official verdict which has never been denied. Similarly is the case of every other sect. Each sect has been officially declared as Pakka Kafir by other sects at various times and by such leaders as it is impossible for the mullah of today to deny their authenticity. They stand so high in a position of respect in their respective sects. These are the dogmatic differences. Yes, please.
This question, which I'm going to ask, is on behalf of my friend Hassan Khan. He's not here. Why is he not here? Well, he's far away from here. Otherwise, go back? Yes. Yeah. We work together. he lives in near New Mall. Yeah, he lives in New Mall in somewhere.
New Mall is not very far away.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, the question is, the ark of Hazrat Noah was finally stopped against the mountain of Judi, mentioned in the Holy Quran, but probably it's different in Bible. It's probably recently, probably American specialists tried to find out where the date. Can you kindly explain whether this ark can be traced again?
What do you mean? Anybody's guess? The fact is that it was a wooden ark, this we know. And it is generally very, very remote hope of a wooden ark of that age to be found intact. Unless, of course, if it is buried in deep snow and at some mountain which is generally buried in snow. This is why the expeditions which have been searching for the said ark have always gone up to great heights to discover this ark. For two reasons. Number one, those expeditions have always been influenced by the Bible. And according to the biblical story, it was on the very top of the mountain that ultimately that ark landed. And that mountain was so high that the entire world around had disappeared in water, and only the very small mountain top was visible. So this is why they go. And second reason is that the only hope of finding the ark would be in a place where there is extreme cold and things like ordinary wood could be preserved. In extremely low temperatures, the chances of preservation are fairly high. For instance, recently in Russia, in Siberia, they found an elephant child buried in deep snow, which was supposed to be about a few 100,000 years old. And his flesh was so fresh that they ate some of it. And it was absolutely alright, just like ordinary deep frozen meat. So this is the quality of cold, extreme cold. Because the temperatures there never touch zero. They're always much below zero. So there is no question of any destructive natural phenomena to act upon that. Similarly, that ark, if at all, it landed at a mountain top that high, which is always a snowbound mountain. In that case, of course, it would be acceptable. It is possible that it can be discovered. But according to my study of the Holy Quran, this is very remote. Because the Holy Quran does not say a flood that high which covered the entire surface of the earth, and as I explained it earlier, it is impossible anyway. For a flood to have been born in the Middle East and have gone across the Pacific Ocean to the Fiji Islands and to Japan, this is just mythical, and the Holy Quran never claims this. So the biblical concept is different, but the Holy Quran is very distinct about it. It is only a small area, the people of Noah, which were drowned. That we know. And before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was no universal prophet. Noah or whatever his name is. After the initiation of religion, it was only Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam who was a universal prophet. So when Noah never addressed the whole universe, why should the whole universe have been destroyed for rejecting him, while they didn't reject him either? In the first place, they never got the message. It's all a hocus pocus concept which is rejected by the Holy Quran. So, because no such flood could have taken place which could have reached a mountain top which is always buried in ice. It is impossible. And secondly, if that flood had in fact risen to that height, then the Holy Quran should have mentioned that it was a snow-bound mountain top along which the boat landed. So it is all a misinterpretation of the Holy Quran and of course an interpolated version of the Bible which causes all this confusion. But still there are other chances. For instance, if Allah wants to preserve something, some natural phenomena can be brought to, could be gathered in one small place. Miraculously in the sense that normally you don't find these various factors get together in one place. But miraculously sometimes some natural factors are collected together in one spot to play an important role. This is why without mummifications some buried people are found, their bodies are found intact, while there are no signs of any mummification. Some elements of soil, some other factors play a part. Allah knows chemistry better than anyone else, so He can see to it that things are preserved. So maybe a type of wood was used which defies influence of bacteria or mite or things, termite and or maybe some lotion was applied at the instructions of Allah, which was a preservative, or the soil where it landed was supplied with some sort of chemicals which worked as a preservative. So many factors unknown to us can have played a part. I don't rule it out either, but the chances are very, very thin and remote. Any other question? Because our professional questions are not here, so we'll have to cut it short. This is why I'm lengthening intentionally the answers, so that we could reach the prayer time, the early part of the prayer, early end of the prayer time. Yes, please, Dr. Dawood Sahib, you have come to our aid. I told Jami Sahib to be ready with some fundamental questions, so that if we need to, the gaps to be filled.
चूँकि सवाल नहीं है, एक सवाल करता हूँ उर्दू में। हज़रत मसीह मौद ने फरमाया है, जो अपने भाई का गुनाह माफ़ नहीं करता वो ये जमात में से नहीं। ये बात मेरी समझ में नहीं आती। मैं रिक्वेस्ट यू टू एक्सप्लेन।
फर्स्ट क्यों समझ में नहीं आती?
वो उस ज़माने में मुस्लिम ने ये बात की थी, ऐसे कौन से गुनाह हैं जो भाई कर सकता है भाई के लिए, और वो ऐसे कौन से गुनाह हैं जिनको माफ़ करना जरूरी है जमात अहमदिया में दाखिल होती है।
Correct. The fact is that that whole tone, the entire tone has to be correctly assimilated and understood before you begin to define a particular order in that Hamari Talim. You have just picked this out. This is what bothered me, which I wondered at. While this particular injunction, while everything is said in the same tone, and many small things which you always do are mentioned there as prohibited, and if you do that, you don't belong to Meri Jamaat. So, ordinarily, this is ununderstandable. Not only this, why to pick on this? Every word of it is of such high order that ordinary common human beings can't even understand, not to mention their acting upon those intentions. So here, it is, what is the Meri Jamaat is the highest concept of religion which is conceived by the Prophet. And that's the Jamaat of which Hazrat Masih Maud is speaking. A Jamaat which he wants to build, which is his ideal. And that ideal is so great and so high that that ideal is the culmination of every religion, much more so of Islam. Every religion in their limited field, of course, but of Islam in every field. So the term Muslim as applied to the prophets is different from the term Muslim as applied to the Bedouins, for instance. And if you understand that difference, then you'll understand Meri Jamaat, what Hazrat Masih Maud means by Meri Jamaat. At one place, Hazrat Ibrahim is mentioned as a Muslim. At another, Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is mentioned as a Muslim, an Awwalul Muslimin. While they are prophets, everybody knows what is this compliment. To call a prophet a Muslim, that ordinarily appears to be a degradation, while it is not. Muslim in the highest sense means one who has submitted entirely and totally to the will of Allah, to a point where he ceases to exist as far as his own will is concerned. A complete negation of himself. So that is the highest meaning of Muslim. Now if you apply that meaning, I mean keeping that meaning in view, if you apply the term Muslim to others, tell me if there is a single person who could be called a Muslim in that regard. So none belongs to that Islam in which culminated in the person of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And there is another Islam also mentioned in the Holy Quran. Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is told that those of the Bedouins who claim they are believers, tell them the belief has not even touched their heart, it has never entered their heart. Yet tell them to call themselves Muslims. وَلَكِنْ قُولُوا أَسْلَمْنَا. The meaning is, you are permitted to call yourselves Muslims. So the lowest definition of Muslim is that from which even those are not turned out by Islam, about whom Allah bears witness, that belief has not even entered their hearts. It has not touched them. Such people are called Muslims. So it all depends on who is speaking and what is the occasion of that speech. So the tone of Hamari Taaleem is this, that Hazrat Masih Maud wants to make it very clear to every follower that this is my objective. This is where my heart lies. This is what I want you to be. Like the mothers say, I want, oh my son, I wanted you to be that, or that, or that. And you're not a son as I expected, as I wanted to be. A tone much deeper in pathos and much more sincere, and in fact it is so charged with truth that there are no words for me to describe that tone, which has been adopted by Hazrat Masih Maud to express his desire, what he wanted the Jamaat to be, and in the mirror of that expectation of Hazrat Masih Maud, an Ahmadi can see his reflections. So if he cannot be of an order to belong to the highest expectation of Masih Maud, at least that mirror would continue to serve as a reminder that you should move in that direction. If you can't be one of those for the creation of whom Masih Maud appeared, try to be one of those. If you die on that path, even that would be acceptable to Allah. But if you know all this teaching as if it is beyond you, you cannot reach it, and stop at its place, not moving in that direction, then it is, Allah can forgive anybody, but barring that, to all possibility that you are barring your own way from reaching salvation. The philosophy of this travel towards the goal has been made very clear by Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if you can't be one of those who belong in every respect to the Jamaat of Masih Maud alayhi salam, you can always be one of those who endeavor very sincerely to be one of those. And even if somebody dies on that path, he is expected, in fact, he is more likely to be forgiven by Allah than those who have abandoned the attempt. And this is made clear by Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a tradition by way of an anecdote. He tells of a person who had committed so many sins that apparently it was impossible for him to be forgiven. He had, according to Guru Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, killed 99 people, and one was left to complete the century. So he went from place to place, from scholar and saintly person to a saintly person, and put before him his position of jeopardy. And they rejected him. They said, no, there is no hope for you. You are positively to be made a fit fodder for hell. And you can't be salvaged. You have gone too far. So, having got tired of everything, once he went to a saint who rejected him, he said, all right then, when I have killed already 99, why not the 100th one? So he killed him. And came out very much dejected, having lost hope. Then he met someone, a wise person. He said, look here, I know you live in a town which is a wicked town. As long as you live in that wicked town, you will always remain under the influence, and there is no hope, of course. But I know of a town which is inhabited by very pious people. The very great majority of that town is godly, God-fearing, and if you go and live there, there is some hope that you will be influenced and ultimately you may be saved. So he started traveling in the direction, and Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us that he died on the way. But he died in a manner that was so appreciated by Allah. Allah liked that manner of his death, that he decided there and then that this person should be forgiven. According to the tradition, he started inching his way, lying prone on land. In his death throes, he tried to move closer to the town so that he should die nearer to salvation if he can't achieve the salvation. When Allah saw this effort, he decided to forgive him. The angels, according to the Guru narration, presented the case to Allah that such and such person has died. He had committed so many sins. What is the order about him? Should we throw him to hell? Of course. He is a fit person for hell. So Allah said no. He was traveling in the direction of goodness. If he could not reach it, at least he was moving in that direction. So you measure the distance between the town of the bad people and the place of his death, and also measure the distance between the place of his death to the town of the good people. If he is closer to the destiny, then he should be forgiven. If he is closer to the evil town, then of course take him to hell. And Anand Sallallahu tells us that while the angels were measuring, Allah so ordered the earth, lying in the direction of the evil town, ordered the earth to squeeze and become shortened, and so that expand in distance and to appear longer, much longer. And when they started measuring the other side, he ordered the earth to squeeze and to appear as if it is much shorter, because the decision had already been taken. Now this is an illustration, not exactly how it happens and how it happened. This was the way of Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to tell us the boundless mercy of Allah, to inform us of the boundless mercy of Allah and how He acts. So in view of that, this is my belief, that if somebody is travelling in the direction of that Jamaat which Hazrat Masih Maud came to create, then he has nothing to fear. But emotion there must be. A set direction should be your goal, and you must go on making an endeavor to move in that direction. Then whenever you die, whether you have achieved your goal or not, that is immaterial in that respect. Your honest intention and your honest endeavor, these are the two factors which will weigh heavily in the eyes of Allah. Otherwise, if you are moving in another direction, even if you are comparatively a pious man than another, whose face is differently directed, such second person has lost hope, and the first person I have described, in my opinion, is positively in a position to receive Allah's grace. So by that I don't mean take it lightly. The teaching is very important. By that I mean you must take it very seriously and endeavor to your best ability. If you do so, honestly and sincerely, you may become one of those. And I have seen people, Ahmadis, who previously very hard-hearted, when they were reminded of the saying of Hazrat Masih Maud Salam, they immediately got transformed into a very different person. I think I mentioned one instance here, our lady whose son was killed by another Ahmadi. So it was said, and everybody believed in the village. And there was an old enmity dividing the whole village between the two. Half of the Ahmadis sided with the so-called killer party, and the half with the murdered boy and his relatives. So it was a very sad situation. When I went there, I was told that people have tried before and nobody listens, and it's impossible. Tempers are running very high. So I said, all right, I'll go to the lady and tell her myself. So I told the lady, I have brought you a message from Masih Maud Salam, and what is your reaction? He said, what reaction? She was so deeply moved that it was impossible for me to contain myself. After my Lord's word, how can I say no? So he called her boys, and she called her boys and said that everything is forgiven. Don't mention this thing again. We are like brothers, and I am going to invite them to my house. And she threw a feast in the honor of those who had supposedly killed the son. So such are Ahmadis. They love Hazrat Masih Maud so much and are so deeply influenced by him that they pay quite some weight to the teachings. So some can achieve, some can die on the path of their effort to achieve. All those are good, and nothing can be said against them. So not you, But no one Ahmadi should use this as a handle of deriding others or looking down upon others. Some people start doing it. And they forget that it is a bigger crime to look down upon their brothers than to fall short in some expectations. So I think it's time now. Okay, if it is a short,
very short.
Question is short, but answer.
But Dr. Bashir and Dr. Saud Bashir has said, if I remember correctly, it is like this, that hasten to become brothers among yourselves as though born of one mother. Hasten to become one among yourselves as though born of one mother. Most honored among you is he who forgives the most transgressions of a brother. And unfortunate is he who does not forgive and is obdurate. He has no part in me, he has no share.
No, that is, I think, the explanation. The wording is outside is correct. At the height of that teaching, when it reaches the very height of oratory and depth as well, not only the height, depth of sincerity, there he mentions things like this. One who does not this does not belong to me, to my community. One who does not do this doesn't belong to my community. One who does that does not belong to my community. So short sentences are mentioned. So the spirit, as I have told you, is the same as I have explained. So that tone also is so moving and so awe-inspiring that it creates wonders. If you read it repeatedly, then you know the influence. All right, Farisa,